welcome everyone to our event. My name is Rosemary and I am the founder and chairperson of the International Climate Student Movement. And we are very happy to see some participants and our panelists from student organizations. And yeah, so let me tell something about the purpose of this event. We will pre-launch our Act on a Climate Science campaign, and we will discuss how we can make this campaign as successful as possible together. And we will also give you information about our recruitment opportunity to become a campaign coordinator. And now I give the floor to Lucy, who can give you more details about our program for today.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rosemary. So we'll start with a short presentation of the Act on Your Climate Science campaign, and then we'll follow that with a panel discussion with representatives from the International Climate Students Movement, Global Student Forum, and students organising for Sustainability International. And then we'll have a panel discussion with our regional representatives as well. If you've got any questions about the campaign during these presentations or during the panel discussion, you're welcome to write those in the chat and we'll try and go through them, and hopefully we'll have time to ask those as well. We have prepared some questions for the panels, but hopefully we'll have time to answer these. So we'll have a session for 10 minutes or so with the campaign presentation and the panel discussions. And then after a short break, we'll give you some more information about the national coordinators and the recruitment process, followed by some breakout rooms as well. So I think I'll pass you over to Isha or Rosemary, I think actually. Yeah, Rosemary.
Okay, thank you. So let me give you a presentation of our movement and our campaign. So I will share my screen. Just give me a second. Yes. So I would first like to tell you something about the climate student movement. And we were founded in Sweden in 2018, and here are some pictures from that time. So we had petitions at universities and started local groups all over Sweden to impact the universities to start acting in line with their own climate science. And we also had national conferences with our local groups, and we had climate strikes, and we met with the sustainability managers of universities to start collaborating with them. And also we met with the Minister of Higher Education. And this all this work led to 40 universities developing and adopting a climate framework to be in line with the Paris Agreement by 2030. And it also led to the minister sharpened its regulations for universities to report on their emissions. And yeah, we also developed a yearly climate ranking for universities that has made them improve yearly. And 1 year ago, we started an international organization, Climate Student Movement International. And yeah, here are some of our members. At the moment, we have members in 9 countries around the world. And we have monthly member meetings and yeah, giving capacity building and yeah, discussing how we can improve our work together. And yeah, here's a map of our current members. And yes, so and at the moment we are developing this global advocacy campaign together with International Student Organization As IPCC stated in its latest report, it is still possible to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees if we act immediate, rapid, and large scale. And we have seen these warnings from scientists all these years now. And this is IPCC, of course. And another example is scientists warning. And this is 11,000 scientists that have signed this warning. And we also have the Fridays for Future climate strikes, youth taking the streets. But still these warnings have not influenced enough people in power. So we think that there can be more that has to be done. Isha, can you please continue?
Sure, okay, I'll just pick it up from here. So basically, we believe that we need a wake-up call from thousands of universities around the world in order to get more people in power to listen to the climate science and equity. That's why we are developing this campaign. Since higher education institutions are the producers of climate science, they can, by practicing what they preach, also give more credibility and urgency to the science-based action that we need in society. So we want to develop a campaign which is tailored to higher education institutions and which can develop a powerful student voice. Existing campaigns such as the Race to Zero campaign that you can see on the screen have already gained signatories from higher education institutions and businesses around the world. And we would like to continue this momentum looking towards COP27 as well. So how will our campaign work? It will stem from the fact that we students have the power to push universities to act. We have started and will continue to develop a climate framework by students, and this framework aims to set targets in line with climate science and equity, create and implement an action plan, and it requires higher education institutions also to declare a climate emergency and also have a reporting mechanism back to a ranking that will be a student-led climate ranking. We hope to have 1,000 HEIs signed to our student climate framework by COP27. We know that this is a very ambitious plan, and the question is how will we organize ourselves in order to achieve this? This is where our campaign coordinators come in. The role of the coordinator is split up into several possibilities, including receiving training and support in our academy, promoting the framework to HEIs, mobilizing students to push higher education institutions, and influencing relevant stakeholders. We really value individuals who demonstrate a passion for the climate and finding solutions to the climate crisis. Our campaign will also require the formation of 4 teams, and these are the academy team, the communication team, the action paper team, and the ranking team. We've developed a short video that goes into further details about the recruitment process and responsibilities for each of these teams, which we will share with you at the end of this event. So lastly, our timeline, which you can see on the next slide. Our recruitment for National Coordinator opens today and will close on the 30th of November. We'll then start the Communication Academy team and develop the framework and academy during the period of November, together with the teams that we are forming. And in December, early in December, we intend to hold an introduction for the national coordinators where we will allow them to meet each other, get to know one another, and also form teams. Finally, in December, we'll also be preparing for the official campaign launch in January. With this, I think I will now pass the time back to Lucy, who will continue.
Yeah, thanks, Isha. So the next part of this event is the panel discussion. So we'll start with the global panelists. So if you could each say something briefly about yourselves and which organization you're representing, that would be great. So Tim, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So yeah, I'm Tim. I'm from Germany originally and working for Students Organizing for Sustainability International. And we are a sort of global network of student-led organizations, mostly at a national or international level. I'm really trying to join forces across student-led networks to have more collective impact, amplify each other's campaigns.
Great, thank you. And I think we've got Ankit as well. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Of course, thank you for having me. My name is Ankit. My pronouns are he and him. I'm a student from India, recent graduate of Canada, and here representing the Global Students Forum. The Global Student Forum, also known as GSF, is the international platform of student unions and organizations, ensuring that our voices actually reach international platforms and supporting our national and regional memberships as well. Looking forward to this discussion.
Great, thank you. And we've also got Rosemary again. So she is going to introduce herself as a panelist as well.
Yeah, hello. My name is Rosemary, and I'm the founder and chairperson of Climate Student Movement.
Great, okay, so we'll get started then with the first question. And the first question I'll pose to Rosemary first, if you want to get started. And that is, why is it necessary for students to push HEIs to become climate leaders, do you think?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we already have this had this presentation talking about it, but just to dig a bit deeper into it. Yeah, students are the lifeblood of higher education institutions, and the universities are really dependent on the students. Yeah, want to study at the university and are yeah, think that their education is good and so on. So the voice of students has really got a lot of impact on university's development. And also I think that students are well organized in student unions, and that gives us a good opportunity to yeah, be representatives in universities' yeah, committees and boards and so on. So we have a strong voice at university already. So I think that we can use that voice to impact HEIs at a bigger scale when it comes to their climate impact. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Tim, what would your response be to that question?
Yeah, I guess students are the biggest stakeholder group of a university. So if students with a common voice demand changes, then universities are usually quite responsive to that. That might depend a little bit per country, but especially in the UK, I think, where the higher education has become much more kind of marketized, and so the students are kind of like the consumers of the company. So they yeah, really need to respond to that demand. And yeah, I mean, I think it's also important to consider how, if students are influencing their universities and they have that experience of actually being successful at that, that will also carry through into how they, just their attitude in life, basically, as they carry through into their careers. They have that experience of, you know, my social environment, my organizational environment is shapeable. I can have an impact on the surroundings. So I think that will also have a sort of knock-on effect on how they show up at work and in their communities, and just bringing that change-making ethos into different aspects of their lives.
Yeah, fantastic points. And Ankit, what would you say in response to that, or to the question?
Yes, I mean, I think my colleagues have stated most of the core arguments. The other periphery arguments are essentially that higher education institutions themselves have a significant stake in climate change itself, not just climate change education, but how markets deal with climate change. There were movements in North America, which is my home student unions, called Occupy and Divest. And both of those had students organizing themselves in very effective hierarchies, ensuring that their demands were met. And Divest was specifically around the demand to get universities to move their endowments away from fossil fuels Divest had a huge impact in how North American universities, and to a great extent Canadian universities and the universities that I've attended, how they deal with their endowments and their money. And that is just one of the small ways that these institutions can have an impact on climate change on a large scale. I think there's also another thing to consider. Education industry, if we consider it an industry, is huge. It is large and it is growing faster and faster as we talk, as demand for education and more diverse education increases across the world. And in this increasing demand, education institutions also become significant polluters. And so how education institutions deal with their capacities and how they might pollute and how they might impact their local environment is also a small brick, let's say, in the huge palace of climate change.
Yeah, fantastic. So all of those responses are really interesting in thinking about not only climate education, but the climate issue as something that's very fast-paced, but also very shapeable as well. Brilliant. Okay, so our next question is, working together as international student organizations, how can we make our campaigns successful, do you think? So if we mix it up a bit, Tim, do you want to start with this one first? Oh, I think you might be on mute.
Yeah, I guess it's mainly about having the leverage of numbers. So just having a lot of international student organizations signing up to the campaign and really showing that we have an aligned vision and that we're kind of behind the same demands. And yeah, I think the science piece is definitely a key leverage point. And I think that's something to still kind of figure out a bit further, like what does it actually mean to have like science-based demands? The way I understood that this is also what would differentiate this campaign from the climate letter from, what was it now? The Race to Zero. Yeah, and I think implementation capacity is definitely a key point. Like oftentimes these kind of really ambitious ideas can suffer from implementation when there's too much kind of volunteer work and then people burn out. And so we also need to make sure that people are well resourced and take care of their personal well-being, and ideally get some financial backing for the campaign sooner than later.
Yeah, exactly. So we want our campaign to be sustainable as well, don't we? Yeah, fantastic. And Ankit, what would you say in response to that question?
I think there's some experience that the fellow student and climate organizers bring to the stage. And this is my appeal to you if you want to become a national coordinator or a climate campaign coordinator for CSM. The three movements, the three ways in which student organizations have achieved the vast levels of organizing capacities that we have is that we follow three particular steps. We work locally, as in we make sure that students on the ground see our work and get to interact with it. They feel involved and they understand that they have a stake. Then we act nationally, because a lot of these policies are implemented on larger scales and require large scale responses. There is often sometimes there's a wildcat strike or rally, or sometimes there's an uncoordinated rally at one university or one institution that gets a lot of media coverage, but their policy impact is often minimal. The most impactful rallies, organizing, and actions are often coordinated properly across the political board that you have, nationally or provincially if you're in Canada, and mobilize internationally. And that's what we're doing here. We're mobilizing internationally to make sure that the stakeholders from across the world actually come together and understand how can we all help and empower each other's struggles. And then there's obviously, the basics of organizing: educate, agitate, and organize. And I'm sure all of this will be included in the academy that CSM has to offer for all of you that apply. So I'm looking forward to seeing, to making sure that this campaign is successful and how all of you take stake in it.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, really, really useful to think about the organization, the implementation of it. Rosemary, did you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I would like to say that we in Climate Student Movement, we are really a small organization when it comes to active volunteers working with the campaign, and also the size of our numbers. So I really think that we can reach out to a higher number of students through our collaboration with a Global Student and SOS Student Organizing for Sustainability. And so we have formed a coalition, a campaign coalition together as international organizations, and also including global students, regional federations. And we hope that we can get invited to your events as well, and that we can have events together. The timeline is to launch the campaign in January. Also, we hope now during November, December, before the official launch in January, that we can develop the campaign framework together, and also how we can, during the campaign next year, that we can also develop, hopefully, an international climate action paper for higher education institutions. That would be wonderful, and also an international ranking for higher education institutions. So we think with the framework, the action paper, and the ranking, that we have good resources to both educate students in how they can push their university even more, but also that we can be a strong voice on the international arena when it comes to advocating for example, the Race to Zero campaign. If we can impact them to have more science-based targets, that would be wonderful and amazing. And I think there is other such international campaigns that includes businesses and the academy sectors and so on, that we can have an influence on. So that is our hope with this campaign as well.
Thank you, Rosemary. Okay, I'm just aware of time, so for the last question, if we have it more quick fire round, but on the flip side of what we've just been talking about, what challenges do you foresee for our campaign? Any limitations, and do you have any ideas as to how we could overcome them as well? So if we start with Ankit.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the primary limitations and challenges that you're going to face on the ground is that you will find that the university administrators are the reservoir of apathy. They don't want to do things that they haven't decided on already. So getting them to mobilize on things that are in favor of students and that students have a stake in requires a significant amount of effort. So do not back away from taking on the challenge and really ruffling some feathers if you have to, which you will have to. And then the other thing is addressing the various gaps that exist within the institutions of universities that allow the administrators to do whatever they want. There's often a huge gap between the students that organize and student workers that organize and the professors that organize and other campus labor that organize, and they don't often work together. So as campus-based coalitions, building those very successful and densely working coalitions would be a primary target. And that's how I foresee all of and many of these challenges being overcome.
Brilliant, thank you. And Tim, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I would say what I mentioned earlier with the Race to Zero's climate letter, that you want to avoid that people think, okay, we already have this huge global coalition with maybe similar demands, so to what extent is this like duplicating efforts? So to just have a clear communication on how this is adding to what's already going on and creating synergies, and has a more science-based approach perhaps. And to really ensure that this campaign is being taken seriously by institutions, and for that I'd imagine to also get the support from researchers like Scientists for Futures, or staff, and maybe even companies who are really backing the campaign. So it's perceived as student-led but backed by various stakeholder groups.
Yeah, fantastic. So this idea of credibility as well to back the campaign. And Rosemary, very quickly, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I have the example when we built the campaign in Sweden. So already from the beginning, we started to collaborate with the sustainability managers, and they were really afraid that they will even get fired if they demanded science-based targets. But when they felt that they had their students on their back, they could be more brave. So I think that this is really about helping the managers that already is engaged in environment and climate, and they want to see a more sustainable world, but they are a bit afraid to take these bold steps. So if we can encourage them and really say that you have the student on your back, be brave, I think that they can take these steps together with students to push on the universities, committee and boards to also be brave, because it's both it's a bit scary actually to do this, and I think that we also from the beginning we started to collaborate with scientists. So I think that having both the student and the managers and the scientists on the same page, communicating the same message, is really strong. So what I like to finish with is that I am personally very inspired by Christiana Figueres and her message to be a stubborn optimist and take this step by step. So I think that we really can take this step by step and learn during this process from each other, and using the strength of being in a network. And can we create this international network? I think that we can make stronger national networks and local networks. So that is my hope with this campaign.
Great, thank you. So we'll say goodbye to our global panelists for now. Thank you all for speaking. It was really interesting and helpful. And I think we're moving on to our regional panelists now. So I think Tim might be sorting the images out again, but if we could have all of you have your cameras on if you can, and start with an introduction. So Martin, would you mind saying a few words to introduce yourself to start with, please?
Yes, definitely. And hello to everybody from Prague, Czech Republic. I am Martin, a member of the Executive Committee of the European Students' Union, and we represent approximately 20 million higher education students across Europe, including some affiliated regions from Asia.
Great, thank you, and nice to have you here. And next, Abdul, could you say a few words to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Abdul. I'm from Fiji in the Pacific region, representing the Commonwealth Students Association. I'm not part of the executive, but I tend to represent the Commonwealth Student Association in different forums. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And then we've got Mariam. Oh, I don't think we can hear you. That might. I'm not sure. I can't hear you.
Not me neither. You might want to disconnect your headphones and try it that way.
Everyone, I am Mariam Gamal, a public health specialist from Egypt. It's good now?
Yeah,
yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I am All African Student Union representative at Egypt. Happy to be with you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And is that all of our regional panelists, or have I missed someone? That is, Isha's nodding. Great, okay, so the first question then for you guys is, what does it actually mean for higher education institutions to turn climate science into climate action? So this could be logistically, conceptually, academically, morally, and how can HEIs as an institution take responsibility for its own climate impacts? So whether that's energy use, traveling, procurement, waste management, setting climate targets, things like that. So if we start with Abdul, do you have any thoughts on that?
Thank you. That's a very good question, actually. Coming from a region that is and will be affected a lot by climate change, we are small island states, or as we like to call ourselves, big ocean states. We're surrounded by the ocean from all sides. We have got countries in the region which are already facing the brunt of rising sea levels. So our higher education institutions play a huge role in research, which helps in policy development. Lots of students go through our systems through climate change programs or development programs. They do lots of research on climate change. But where does the data from those research, the recommendations from those research go? Governments and higher education institutions need to work together because there's lots of data being, output, but it's not being translated into policy. I think the other thing in terms of higher education institution is they are the repository of this information, of this data. They need to implement these measures within the university system. Logistically, for example, going green. I'm part of the Fiji National University, and just I think last year we embarked on a project where we are going 90% green for some of our campuses. It's the first such type of project in Fiji and the region, and hopefully other universities in the region take lead from that. So yeah, so universities as repositories of information, possibilities of research, possibilities of collaboration with research institutes and centers, they need to translate this research data into policies, work with national governments, with regional intergovernmental organizations to bring about the necessary policy changes.
Thank you, that's really interesting. So this idea of multifaceted responsibility and also connections with government and different organizations. Yeah, brilliant. Mariam, what are your thoughts on this question?
Excuse me, may I repeat? Because I have a problem.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, repeat the question, sorry. Yes, sorry.
Yeah,
so what does it mean for higher education institutions to turn climate action, or sorry, to turn climate science into climate action?
Okay, here university is a vital hub of research and teaching on climate change. As large organizations, they have significant emissions and contribute to our climate crisis. So a lot of universities have responded to the demand and become more sustainable by making practical changes on the way the institution run, switching to greener energy, reducing the energy output, encouraging sustainable habits in staff and students. Also, they have done a lot of campaigns for students for increase the awareness of students about the climate crisis, and to change the behavior of students in consuming substance in their life, and how to decrease the use of plastics, and also to contribute in the recycling initiative at our university. Also, as some universities have set up a solar farm that help in the electricity needs, which resolves the problem of the climate change crisis.
Great, thank you. So this idea of behavioural change, not just policy change, is really interesting that you brought up. And lastly, we've got Martin. What are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I would focus on two levels, maybe. The first one being immediate action, and the second one being delayed action in the more in the long run. So firstly, as for the immediate action, we need to realize something that Ankit has already stressed, and that is that the universities that produce knowledge about science, that means including the climate and environment, and how the weather around and the conditions we live in are changing, they need to follow up on what the institutions themselves have found. You know, they need to turn these words into actions, and thus lead by example. And this can be done by adjusting the internal procedures, or maybe establishing an internationally recognized awards and excellence. For example, in Europe, we have an award for institutions that are excellent in human resources, and these are awarded by European Commission. And I believe that if there was such a award in sustainability as well, then universities themselves can strive to achieve these awards as a sort of internal goal. So the first thing is to follow up on their own research. And the second level is this delayed action, and that is by continuing to raise awareness and doing it in a maybe better way. Because by educating people, raising awareness, you might not get an action that is immediate. You might, if that happens, this is perfect. But very likely you will get a sort of a delayed reaction, because people will get the knowledge, and then when the time comes, they will remember it and act on their own. So we also need to foster this level, because it can lead to very good spillover benefits in the medium and long run.
Thank you. Yeah, that's an excellent point as well. Brilliant. So we've got some really good ideas coming through. I'll move on to the next question, just so we stay on our schedule a bit. And that is, are students in your region actively engaged in defining the roles and responsibilities of HEIs when it comes to climate action? And do you think this tends to be on an individual basis or on a structural basis? So yeah, if we mix things up again, shall we start with Martin for this one and go around the other way?
Yes, definitely. So I think that in our region, Europe, there are huge regional differences. I believe that in countries in Scandinavia and in some countries in Western Europe, there are quite a well-organized students movement, whereas the rest of the Europe is sort of catching up in this sense. However, this doesn't have to be only a bad thing, because the more advanced regions serve the other ones as an inspiration. So they do not have to reinvent the wheel. Sorry, I had some intermission hearing from somebody. Oh, never mind. And regarding the engagement of students, sorry, can you hear it too, or is it just me?
I can hear it. Yeah, I'm not sure it's coming through. It is stopped now.
Okay, fine. So maybe somebody was muted. So to follow up, I think that in Europe there are structures established already that the students can use via either student representations, which are their members of platforms such as ESU, but also via the academic representatives at individual higher education institutions. For example, in Central Europe, where I come from, there are academic senators, which, if they would be included in activities such as the climate students movement, they could influence the change from within.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, they're all fantastic points. It's the idea of inspiring others and helping other areas as well, so we can achieve this goal. So Mariam, did you manage to hear that question?
Yes.
Yeah.
At the North Africa region, especially at Egypt, the Climate Change Center Department at the Ministry of State for Environmental Affairs has done many exhibitions and scientific seminars and environmental campaigns to raise awareness towards the climate change. Also holding a lot of training courses for teachers and educational inspectors on how to simplify the climate change phenomena for students, and how to teaching the positive behaviors with a group of new ideas of teaching aids. Like we have some small projects for schools, for students at universities, with posters, copybooks, tickets, CDs, which help also at the media and also visual media and the audio, which make the publication in the way of how to act for this climate change and the crisis. Also, we have 30 green corner field sites has been prepared in developing a new generation capable and responsible of the protection of the environment, and how to change the behavior to replant places at schools and at universities. Here at October 2020, the World Bank approved $200 million project for Egypt to improve air quality, combat climate change, and reduce emission of air pollution and global warming. So we have the track to help in this crisis and how to minimize its impact. But still, we need more campaigns and more international intervention. Thank you.
Great, thank you. It was really interesting to hear about all of those initiatives that you were talking about. And lastly, we've got Abdul. What did you make of that question?
Yeah, so as I said, Pacific has been really affected and will continue to be affected by climate change. And we have got something called the Pacific Island Students Fighting for Climate Change. Right now, they are doing a campaign to seek an advisory from the International Court of Justice on climate change. We have got smaller groupings called the Econesian Society, the Environment Society at the University of the South Pacific, which is one of the only 2 regional universities in the world. Ironically, since we're on the topic of HEIs and climate change, universities are one place that students converge, and it provides a platform for them to actually gather, share ideas and thoughts, come to a common objective, you know, to create such movements. And we have seen that happen in Fiji and the Pacific. So there are multiple student bodies that are born out of university settings that are advocating for climate change. We've just had, I think, about 16 students from the University of the South Pacific's Center for Pacific Sustainability. I'm sorry, I'm not sure of the name, who have traveled to Glasgow to present research finding at Glasgow holding side events. So students are involved in climate change movements. There are individuals who are part of research, who are quite passionate, who are taking the Pacific to the global arena. There are also movements. There are groups such as the Climate Change Warriors made up of young people. The other thing is that young people, even though they are students, they tend to be clumped with youth activists, and it takes away the fact that they are students also, and the academic freedom that they have within the confines of a university. There are certain things that you are unable to do within outside of university settings because of political problems, but within the university they have academic freedom to discuss these controversial ideas. So that's something that higher education institutions must empower, that kind of conversation and dialogue within universities. So the universities in the Pacific are quite empowering in that sense, because they form the core of what the university provides. There are the universities are providing new courses on climate change, so that helps students to, you know, get motivated to look up or be part of such movements.
Yeah, great. Those are really valuable points. Brilliant. So following on from that question, our next question is, what difference do you think the campaign can make to HEIs in your region? So Mariam, can we start with you with that one?
Yes, for this campaign will help each higher education institution to join the concept of how to act to mitigate and decrease the impact of the climate change crisis. Not every university has joined till now. We started with small campaigns and the small initiatives, but not all the countries, all the continent, the African continent, incorporate it. So I think this movement, this international movement, will influence every student and every university to go through this pack for the development.
Fantastic. And Martin, what did you think?
I hope that maybe one of the impacts could be better cooperation among already existing stakeholders, and creating something that what has been already mentioned today, and that is the sort of standards for universities, some guidelines that all they can stick to. If that would happen, that would be extremely valuable. And maybe one more thing is this is establishing of these internal procedures for procurement, which is in line with what I have said previously. When your institution has come to some conclusions in terms of findings in science, then they need to follow up on it. And I don't think that by using this argument, it's only a matter of time until we get more institutions on board.
Yeah, a really good point as well. And Abdul, was there anything you'd like to add to those answers?
Not really. I think Mariam and Martin actually covered that. And I think with such frameworks, it at least gives universities a basic minimum gold standard to build on. And this could be, as Martin said, basis for partnership among universities in a country to see what they can do in terms of, I'm really keen on the whole research partnership and stakeholder partnership and collaboration part, because as I said, universities are repositories of information. They have students in academia who are doing huge research all around the country or even in the region. And these frameworks could actually be part of implementing policies through those research.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. And it was really interesting what you said earlier about the university space and the academic space and that empowering these discussions to take place. Brilliant. And then our last question for you guys is, oh, my question's gone. I think someone's editing it. Oh no, I can see it again. Okay, our last question is, how do you think HEIs in your region, I think it kind of links in, but how do you think HEIs in your region have been performing in terms of climate action? Do you think it's enough? And what more do you think they can do? So shall we start with Martin for this last question?
Yeah, sure. So I think that the institutions more or less are trying to do something. Is there this effort enough? We do not believe so, but overall it's in a it's on a good track. And again, there are these regional differences. So in some areas such as Northern and Western Europe, the institutions are more advanced. And for the rest of the Europe, that doesn't mean that the institutions do not care, but that means that they have maybe more pressing immediate issues to deal with. But I think that overall, the state where we're slowly heading to is to have some sort of minimal understanding across our varied region. I think that this is a crucial time to act, because the attention is pointing towards the issue. There's starting to be some willingness to act on it, and if we catch up on this attention on climate issues, then we can make a change together.
Yeah, fantastic. And if we go to Mariam, did you have any comments on that?
Yes, we have started, but we haven't completed. We need a track, we need a global protocol to go through for every university, higher education institution, to have a collaboration in the research we started, but it's not the final step. We haven't taken more action. It's the small step, the small first step. I think we need more funds for raising the awareness, for using another energy resource, green resource, to educate everyone how to deal, to serve our world, our continent, to mitigate the impact of the climate change. So I think the movement will help us to go through and to have faster steps.
Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. And Abdul?
Yeah, I do think that universities are doing their best, because it's not only about greening the university, it's also about what kind of knowledge are you preparing to the curriculums to prepare for climate change and environment sustainability. So yeah, in recent times, the universities across the region, I think there's only a handful, because we are small island nations, so it doesn't make sense to have lots of universities in small countries. But those bigger countries which have universities that have regional students, they have introduced lots of climate change courses. That we have tried to find linkages. We have just introduced at the National University, Fiji National University, a interdisciplinary study on climate change, for example, at a master's level, which is looking not only at climate change as an environmental issue, but looking at it as an agricultural issue, as a health issue. I'm a graduate of public health, and unfortunately it wasn't there when I was studying, but I saw the curriculum, and it's really innovative. It's trying to take a very holistic approach. So that's one part. In terms of the other logistics and procurement, etc., I think what we need to understand is how academia has been corporatized, and investing in such green initiatives is not sometimes in the university's favor. So how do we encourage them to move towards a more greener outlook at universities? So if we're going to have a framework that's going to provide a minimum standard for universities to go green or to be part of this climate change movement, we need to think about what are the stakeholders who are important for this. For example, governments, universities make submissions to governments to receive grants for certain projects, and how do they work with the different partners? That's something that could probably be considered. So yeah, universities are doing what they could. The corporatization of academia is a problem, and identifying stakeholders and champions are really important going forward.
Yeah, thank you. And I think a couple of words that you mentioned there, which really struck with me, were holistic and interdisciplinary as well. Really important to think about. So I'm sure everyone will agree that was an absolutely fantastic and inspirational discussion that you guys have participated in. So thank you. Remarkably, we've got actually a few minutes extra, or a few minutes left. So have we got any questions, Isha, from the people watching? Or Tim, I'm not sure who's monitoring it.
One person wrote in the chat, what are the best ways to convince the institutes and facilities who are less active in taking up this global problem seriously and to get engaged, join and motivate the student in their respective institute? Is there any particular framework or curriculum which could be incorporated into the academia?
Yeah, so if we open this up to anyone, any of the panelists, are there any responses to that question if you heard it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the word. I think that by definition of this answer, this pertains to institutions that are not really reactive to incentives from the outside. But what you maybe can do on this in this situation is to convince individuals that are already in the decision-making process, so that you do not come as an outsider proposing such and such measures, but maybe you try to individually address people that are already within the institutions, and they, as they are already in the decision-making process, can then pass this message on.
Yeah, a brilliant response. We've actually got a couple of others. So Anke, I think you had your hand up next.
In my experience location, a lot of students that find themselves, responding in ways that are like, well, what is me being present with some signboards going to do? And the response to that question often needs to be personal. This is not just about what is your sign going to do? It's about what if 200 of you showed up with signs in your hands? And so it's important to make it personal and provide them with that stake in the movement. So yeah, make it personal, give them that stake, give them the responsibility to make sure that, hey, if you show up, maybe somebody else will also be inspired to show up. And maybe if it's only 50 of us today and we have another demonstration, say next week, and there's going to be hopefully 70, hopefully 75 at the next one, and we just want to keep growing. So it's important not to get demotivated at the first action, and it's important to keep pushing. That's how Fridays for Future got where they are. That's how students' unions got where we are. And I mean, there are student activists that are being jailed in different parts of the world today, and there are student activists that are being kidnapped and murdered in different parts of the world. But that's not to deter us. That's only supposed to embolden how we respond to all of these issues.
Thank you. And then Abdul as well.
I'm just going to take cue from what Ankit said and relay just a personal story. And that is that, we talk about how civil society and academia has a huge disconnect when they can actually complement the work they do. The same thing happens with student movement. Student movement is seen as separate, as an entity of the academia part, and not a civil society or a civic activism, a part of civic activism. And I think we need to bring student movements into the fold of civic activism. Civil societies do play a role in holding governments or corporations accountable, and there is a learning opportunity there between student movements and civil society to how to hold your universities accountable. So I think that's really important. I lost the second thought, but yeah, so letting student movements not work in silos within universities, but empowering them to understand that there is intersectionalities within the activism, that they are part of universities, but they're also doing something which is very closely related to civic pride and civic action. So how do we put those two, marry those two concepts together to have accountability frameworks from the student side to the universities?
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's a really good answer to round off our panel discussions today. So thank you again to all of our panelists.
Okay, so I think maybe I'm going to share a bit about our recruitment and what we're looking for in mainly the National Campaign Coordinator, which is what we're trying to recruit for this event today. So basically, in order to make like the ambitious campaign we were talking about, and all our different panelists kind of shared about how we could make it work, but in order to really make it work, we need like passionate students as campaign coordinators to make this run in their own countries and to also reach out to different organizations, to higher education institutions and students. So the coordinator's role essentially in the whole campaign would be, first off, like they will get training and support from our academy. So we're going to develop an academy program I'm going to share after this, which will help to train the campaign coordinator in what they need to do. Following that, they will start promoting the climate framework we talked about, like where we want HEIs to commit to science-based targets and to report back to the different higher education institutions. After that, we want to get after introducing the framework, we also want them to reach out to different students in different like higher education institutions in their own state or in their own country, and mobilize these students to reach out to their own higher education institutions and try to push them to sign on to the campaign, because usually HEIs listen more to the students from their own university. So we need to try to mobilize students within each higher education institution. We also want them to reach out and influence other relevant stakeholders. So not just within higher education institutions, but also maybe like the different ministries that are relevant and can maybe impact HEIs on a larger scale, such as the education ministry or the sustainability ministry if it exists. After that, we also want them to, before that actually, they will also be forming like a national team to build on the national campaign. So of course, it's very hard for one person or a few people to do it. So we also are going to teach them how to reach out and form like a small campaign team to be able to build the national campaign within the country. And with the campaign team, we then expect them to kind of launch the campaign nationally, by mapping and reaching out to climate groups and companies within the country, and expanding on their own network and reach for the different students. We also want them to try to encourage students to start local group within higher education institutions, to start, as mentioned, to start pushing for them to sign the campaign, but also in different areas, because students can often start a lot of different like projects within the universities themselves, also like student-led projects. So basically, as we mentioned, these coordinators will be trained at the beginning of our program through an academy program that we're currently like in development of. And this academy program will lead them through most of what they need to know. So starting off, we will also start with an introduction of the campaign to let them know about what the campaign is about, such as the framework, the action paper, the ranking, the different components of the campaign. We'll also educate them on climate science so that we have everyone on the same page and be able to kind of like communicate the same message with the same knowledge. One area that we're looking into for that is, for example, letting them go through like a carbon literacy program, so they are all like carbon literate and aware of where change can be made as well. We'll also train them regarding advocacy, so they can learn how to reach out to, the government, students, and different higher education institutions, because it's not a skill or something that comes so naturally for everyone as well. On top of that, we're also going to train them regarding mobilization and leadership to give them more skills to be able to carry out this campaign more effectively. After the main academy program, throughout the whole year, we are also going to be providing support and networking opportunities among different campaign coordinators, so they can also learn from each other within, like different countries might have relevant or similar experiences that they can also learn from each other. So who we're looking for in the for the national campaign coordinator is, most importantly, is someone that can commit for at least a year up to COP27, as this would be like at least a year project where we expect the campaign coordinator to be carrying out their task. We would want someone passionate about solving the climate issues and trying to tackle all these different problems. Ideally, we also want someone who is strategic and innovative and can think of different solutions to tackle and address some of these issues, because there are many things interlinking and like connecting the climate issue. So it's important to have someone who can address that. On top of that, we're also hoping we can get someone who is, it would be ideal also if you will be a good speaker and listener. Although this can be trained also, it's good because it would be able to allow you to more easily reach out to different students and also higher education institutions. We also want someone who can be a good facilitator and communicator, mainly, for example, planning events such as the national launch within their own country. We want someone who is able to plan and facilitate such an event. And lastly, also that we want someone who will follow the values of climate students, so to be climate conscious, and also importantly, not to discriminate, and also to be more to be accepting and also open with the different issues. Yeah, so essentially, if you would like to apply, we're opening our first round of application from today after this event up to the 30th of November. So if you're interested, you can look at our page climatestudents.com/apply, where we have all this information on the webpage, and we will also be linking this event on the webpage after this. On top of needing national campaign coordinators, we also mentioned some of the teams that we are also going to be forming to carry out the different backbone of the campaign as well. And we have actually 4 different teams that we are going to have to carry out this campaign. So the first is the academy team that will be building and supporting the whole national campaign coordinators. The second is the communications team that will work on our social media and media coverage, trying to cover the campaign and spreading it to more people. We will also want an action paper team that will work on creating the structure for creating events, for gathering students' idea for actions, and that we can later form a national action paper and hopefully an international action paper, which higher education institutions can use as references for their own action paper. Lastly, we also have a ranking team that will basically be helping towards the last part of the campaign to gather information about the different higher education institutions and ranking them according to our student-led ranking. More information about all these is also in our video that you can find on climatestudents.com/teams, and the sign-up link for that is also in that webpage.
Okay, I think everyone is back to the main room. Yes, so we have some minutes left, and I would like to thank everyone for participating at our pre-launch and recruitment event today. And I hope that all of you have learned a lot from our discussions, and both the panelists and in the breakout rooms. And also, of course, from our presentations. So thank you everyone for participating, and you have the opportunity now to apply to become a coordinator in our campaign, and we have shared the link with you. So until the end of November, you have this opportunity. So I hope that you will find it interesting, and I hope that we meet again when we have our introduction event for coordinators on the 4th of December. So thank you everyone, and hope to see you soon again.